I know X-Men 97 is currently airing, and I'm going to check it out. I'm actually excited to jump into it. But first, I wanted to go back and rewatch the original X-Men the animated series to see how it held up all these years later, and to kind of refresh my memory in preparation for 97. And boy, this show sucks. No, I'm kidding. It's great. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and tell a friend. Let's dive into X-Men, the animated series. I was born in 1994, so this show was very much a staple of my childhood, along with Batman the Animated Series. And sure, they both began broadcasting before I came into the world, but reruns for both of these series were very prevalent growing up, and I was very much a fan. This series, again, along with Batman, really helped to alter the landscape of what animated superhero series were and could be, influencing such shows as Justice League Unlimited, and even in today's world, shows like Invincible. They took a platform which had always been geared more toward the younger demographic and made it enjoyable for adults as well, with their utilization of mature dialogue, morally complex themes, and sprawling storylines. This show was revolutionary, and it's not really the show I remembered as a kid. It makes sense because as a kid I was more focused on the heroes, their costumes, the crazy villains, and the punch-ups that they would get into. But as an adult, sure, those things are still appealing, but I noticed the depth of this show way more than I did in my youth. And while the totality of this series is very, very good, there are aspects that just haven't aged well, and other aspects which I never cared for, and I still don't. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. This show began its run in 1992, most likely began production a few years before that, and the animation is a bit shaky, which anyone on the planet would expect it to be. And some episodes, especially the early ones around season 1 and 2, they're kinda tough to get through. Now, that being said, we have to recognize that for its time, this animation was impeccable. And in all fairness to its creators, by season 5, it's really a non-issue upon rewatch. Branching off from the animation, the character designs for this show are fantastic, heroes and villains alike. I feel like a lot of the designs in this show have become so iconic that they have transcended to various forms of media outside of this series. Anytime I see any images or posts from the most recent Comic-Cons that come up, it seems as though anyone cosplaying as any sort of X-Men character directly adapts costumes from this show. As far as characters go, the vast majority of them are very well written, at least on the side of our heroes. I think the biggest shortfall of this show, however, is the characterization of its villains. Outside of Magneto, Juggernaut, and Sinister, most of the villains in this show either don't get enough screen time, or they are just so one-dimensional that they just come off as boring. Mojo is fun, especially as a parody of a lot of the obnoxious producers inside the film and television industry, but outside those four that I mentioned, the rest are just so bland that they run together. And look, I know a lot of people loved Apocalypse in this show, but I just don't get it. He's just an invincible, over-the-top bad guy who wants nothing more than to take over the universe for reasons unknown. I mean, give us some backstory or just a little bit of motivation at least. Sabretooth and his story with Wolverine and their relationship is interesting, but by season 4 that storyline is so played out that it's just annoying at that point. Mystique gets a few cool episodes, but that's about it. She definitely deserved more. And listen, I don't want to spend this whole video railing against the villains, because like I said, there are some really good ones, mainly Magneto. I know he gets billed as recurring character, which is crazy, but I mean, I get it. He's not in every single episode. But he really is a principal character in this series. He's written with so much moral complexity, and his relationship with Xavier and their constant quarreling with one another is compelling stuff. Speaking of Xavier, oh man, I don't know if it's because we were blessed with the absolute perfect portrayal of this character by Sir Patrick Stewart in the live action version, but as this rewatch progressed along, I went from not really caring about this character to sort of disliking him to wanting him killed off by season 4, and I can't even tell you what it is. I think the voice acting for this character is atrocious. It's so over the top and borderline comical in some scenes. And then there's the fact that we have to watch like 6 unsuccessful love stories from his past play out before us. Did you ever think maybe it's you, Charles? Maybe you're the problem? And he's supposed to be this incredible mentor and leader for this group of outcasts with an ample amount of experience and wisdom. But I feel like half the time, Beast is the one solving all of the problems and being the motivator for the group. And Xavier just sits his lazy ass in his chair. And what's up with the paralysis? Like, he can't walk, but if someone helps him, he can walk, so he's not actually paralyzed. He went through physical therapy to walk again, but then what happened? Did he just stop? I just don't know if they really had a finger on what they wanted this character to be. And sometimes he's just like an asshole for no reason at all. I don't understand why all of these X-Men look up to him with such reverence. Honestly, if I were Cyclops, I'd slap him in the mouth. Okay, I'm losing focus. I'm stressing myself out. So let's go into the X-Men roster. So I think for the most part, the roster in this show is excellent, save for a few members. Wolverine is the GOAT, plain and simple. I think Jackman's version is pretty much an embodiment of this character, and both are just phenomenal. This is probably the best version of Cyclops we've gotten in any show or movie, and he's an inspiring leader, and really the better version of Xavier in my opinion, and he honestly really should have just slapped him in the mouth. This is also probably the best version of Jean as well. The Phoenix Saga as well as the Dark Phoenix Saga just make any other attempt in any other medium look pedestrian. Beast is so fun, one of my favorites of the series, and it really sucks he gets sidelined for the whole first season. Rogue and Gambit are both great, and I love their relationship with one another, but I don't think we get enough of them on their own. We get so many solo outings with Cyclops, Wolverine, Beast, and Jean, but I don't think enough of these two. And for God's sake, bring back Gambit to live action, goddammit. I love Taylor Kitsch, but that poor attempt in that shitty Wolverine Origins film, it doesn't count. I like Storm in this, but she's another one that I feel like doesn't get enough screen time. It seems as though she gets relegated to the background a lot, and it's a shame because I feel as though they nail her characterization. She's this powerful, confident, regal figure, and I wish we would have seen more of that. Okay, full disclosure, I honestly like the entire roster except for Jubilee. I think she's annoying and boring, and I never liked her when I was a kid either, and I never really cared for her reading the comics. I think the original plan for this show was for that spot to be Kitty, Shadowcat, if you don't know who Kitty is, and the executives vetoed it. And in my opinion, this show would have been way better with Shadowcat in place of Jubilee. Her powers are cooler, she has more meaningful source material to draw from, and honestly, Jubilee doesn't really do anything. Now, while I really enjoy the characters on this roster, I wish it would have been an ever-expanding depth chart as seasons went on. There are so many cool characters that appear in this series that I didn't realize until now, upon rewatching it, that they're just cameos for the most part. For instance, I could have sworn Colossus was in this show way more than 2 episodes. That's crazy. They kept teasing him becoming a member down the road and he just kind of disappeared. Add him to the roster. Then there's Bishop, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Banshee, Havoc. A lot of these favorites are subjected to extended cameos or guest spots, and they definitely deserve better. Hopefully, X-Men 97 does a better job at this part of it. Oh, I forgot about Morph. Look, I know a lot of people like him. I don't. I think he sucks. He's weird. His laugh, it's anxiety inducing. Plus, we already have a shapeshifter in Mystique, and she's an iconic character who's way more interesting. That was actually my one reservation of X-Men 97 when it got announced. I was pretty underwhelmed, to say the least, that they were going to bring back Morph for this roster. Just kill him off. Him and Xavier and Jubilee. Actually, look, we solved it. That's 3 spots open on the roster right there. Kill all 3 of them. Add 3 more cooler characters. Okay, maybe I'm being a little harsh. Maybe X-Men 97 fixes these 3 characters for me. Who knows? But in the original, I don't like any of them. I wish they would have got killed off. In terms of the story, this is an animated series, so like a lot of animated shows, there are a lot of one-off episodes, which I honestly didn't mind. A lot of times they kind of utilize these episodes to their advantage as they dig deeper into the history and personality of our main characters, which is a nice break from the 3 to 4 episode arcs. I could have done with fewer Xavier focused episodes though, unless there was one where, like, for instance, Cyclops slapped him in the mouth. I would have been on board with that. Most of the longer arcs are done very well. I will say though, as a reader of the X-Men comics as well, I've never been a huge fan of the cosmic storylines involving these characters. And that remains true with this show. The Phoenix Saga is done well, as I mentioned, but I don't really care for Lilandra and the Shi'ar. When these characters go cosmic and combat alien races, that's when they lose me. I've always liked the X-Men because their story and their struggle is so relevant to the reality that we exist in, and no matter the time period, the themes that accompany them always remain relevant, and I've just never enjoyed when it strays from that. But that's just me. As with most animated series of its time, X-Men is sort of painstaking to get through at some points, but it continues to be as influential as it was in its heyday. It's really a shame that more studios aren't trying to craft comic series like this anymore. Invincible seems to be the only great one currently. I've tried getting into some of the recent Avengers and other Marvel animated series, but the dialogue is just so hokey that I just can't even do it. This series is just so influential to the way we continue to view these characters, and I don't know if it can ever be outdone. And I've heard really great things about X-Men 97, and I honestly cannot wait to get into it. I don't know if it will surpass the cultural impact of this original series, but I promise you I will go into it objectively. And who knows? Hopefully there will be an episode where Cyclops slaps Xavier in the mouth.